So the original Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer was the cream of the crop when it came to multiplayer online first-person shooters. At the time, the controls were pretty tight, and the gameplay was fun and addicting. Jump forward to today, and Sledgehammer released Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer. Now, regardless of my thoughts on the campaign,
it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
It was okay and serviceable as an introduction to the multiplayer. I'll have my Modern Warfare 2 campaign review linked in the description. That being said, I wondered if this iteration of COD would live up to expectations or hide in its shadow. Some of you may have the same questions, and after thoroughly examining the multiplayer, I thought I'd share my opinions of the various game modes and new additions that they've added. I'll be touching on most of the multiplayer modes, as well as Warzone and DMZ. Or you can just skip to the part that you want from the time cards I'll have linked in the description. Another thing to add, I will be doing a COD tips and tricks video in a little bit, so if you enjoyed this video, be sure to call in on that like button, and maybe drop a UAV and subscribe to the channel. I'm still kind of learning everything, but I post reviews to games as frequently as I can. That being said, let's game. During this review, it's definitely hard not to be biased, because Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer will always hold some weight on my mind. It was quite serviceable and was in line with what games were doing back then. There's not really much else to say. I mean, the multiplayer is just really fun, actually. It's not like the original back in 2009, but it doesn't really have to be. This time around, COD decided to try to capture the spark of other competing video games to get a piece of the AAA market.
So give us some of that money!
I'll now briefly go over every game mode, with the first two standout modes being Invasion and Ground War. Invasion is definitely fun. It does a real good job at capturing that large-scale combat, if not a little chaotic at times. Basically, your team starts on one side of this big-ass map and the enemy team spawns on the other, and you throw yourselves at each other until the score limit's reached. There is also bots that show up, and if you take them down, it counts towards your weapon progression, which is pretty good for getting your weapons maxed out. And in large numbers, they can actually be quite formidable. Then there's Ground War, which is essentially the same concept, but with 5 capture points. These modes obviously take inspiration from the Battlefield series, but unfortunately, DICE seem to have dropped the ball on their release. Who knew that Battlefield would goof this hard to the point where COD of all franchises would swoop in for the W this year?
Good. That's one less loose atom.
So the next mode I actually really enjoyed was the Hostage Rescue mode, which does a pretty good job at giving you the Rainbow Six Siege experience. Although I can tell it's pretty watered down from Rainbow Six. It's more just like a 6v6 with no respawns and hostages that you can extract for extra points. You can't really destroy walls or doors to get a better angle on the enemy. And I do also wish that there was a kill streak and a non-kill streak mode for this, cause it's kind of fucking weird to be carrying a hostage on your back and you get whacked by a... So the next mode is the third person mode. I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm actually really good in this mode. Maybe it's cause of all my Fortnite experience that translates pretty well, but regardless, it's actually a fun addition. And is a cool callback to the original game, where they had a third-person mode as well. Although this time I'm super thankful you can change it so when you look down the sights, it'll snap into first-person aiming, instead of doing third-person aiming. And it's just cool to actually see your damn character. Like, the game has all these cool skins, and you definitely know that COD is going to be COD. Like, they're doing the whole milsim right now. But in the future, they're definitely going to get more bombastic with shit as time goes on. Who knows, maybe down the line they'll release some big-bootied anime chick, and you'll see third person's numbers skyrocket. But yeah, other than that, it's just a third-person mode. There's not really much else to say. It's quite appreciated, though. Hardpoint is actually pretty fun, and it's probably the equivalent to snorting a line of G Fuel with how damn fast it is. Basically, it's King of the Hill, but the hill only stays there for like a minute before going somewhere else, and it's pretty crazy yet fun. There isn't really much else to say about free-for-all and team deathmatch. If you don't know what it is by now, then you need some serious help. Maybe my Modern Warfare 2 tricks and tips video will help you out, which should be coming out sometime in the near future. That's right, I just plugged my own video. Super humble, big dick move right there. But yeah, like, what else can you say? I mean, it's free for all and team deathmatch. Like, you know how it is. Domination is your basic capture the area, so it's kind of like ground war, but it's way smaller, and there's usually only 3 points to capture. Search and destroy is basically the original Counter-Strike with no respawns, and the round ends when everyone on the team dies or the attackers plant the bomb and detonate it. The mode is pretty quick since you have only 2 minutes to plant the bomb, or you'll get so frustrated you'd rather use your head to hammer a nail into an anvil. Kill confirmed is like deathmatch, but each kill you get, you have to physically pick up the dog tags, and if you capture your teammates' dog tags, then they don't count as a kill. Pretty good overall. So Knockout is another one of those strange game type modes that probably scratches some type of itch that people have. It has no respawns, but you can revive your teammates, and you need to eliminate the enemy team or make a mad dash for the package and hold it for a little bit. But your location is broadcast to the entire enemy team. It's fun if it comes up every once in a while, but it can be quite infuriating if you're on a losing streak. Headquarters is an interesting one too. It's like Hardpoint, but when you capture the area, respawning for your whole team is cut off until the area is either defended or you fall to the invaders. It's definitely frustrating since respawn is turned off, but it can create some pretty clutch plays. Now, baby, tier 1. This is where it's at. It's essentially hardcore mode from the original multiplayer. There's no HUD, and you can't see your ammo, equipment, tacticals, or even your kill streaks. And you can't even see the map unless you get a UAV, which, I mean, the map is kind of useless anyways, because you can't see the location of people using unsuppressed weapons anymore, so, that's a thing. But regardless, you have crazy low health, and it takes 2 to 3 times longer to recover that health. So if you get shot, you gotta hide like you just took a fat shit and you're waiting for your beehole to recover. The only complaint I have is that I wish there was more. Like, it'd be kind of cool if there was a tier 1 mode for Warzone, which I guess would be like Warzone but with no plates. But my point still stands. So now, onto the guns and a general overview of the maps. The guns in this game are amazing. The sound design is amazing. I mean, you can really feel the weight behind some of these things. The TAC V, which is really just a SCAR variant because they didn't want to get sued again, which I think back in the day they got sued by the makers of Humvee or something like that. I don't know, it was some kind of car. And ever since then, they've been really reluctant to put the names of real products in their game. Plus, I would imagine there'd be like a million internet articles online talking about how it glorifies the manufacturing of the guns or something like that. I mean, you know how it is. Anyways, the TAC V has a real nice punchy sound to it, while the Fennec just spits out bullets with little to no recoil, like its real-life counterpart. If you came to this review to learn how to forsaken sunlight and become a sweat lord, I hold no answers for you. The best advice I can give to someone is find a gun that looks nice, you like how it feels, and you can get kills with it, and just use that. Or you can look up the most current meta, but I always like experimenting because that's how metas are found. Now onto the maps. The maps are all pretty decent. It's actually pretty interesting how all the game modes fit so perfectly on all the maps. The Raceway is probably one of my favorite maps to play games like Domination, Control, and Hostage Rescue on. The only map I have a problem with is Seraph Bay, and I really don't even have that much of an issue with it. Maybe it's just because I like to engage in combat right away, but the capture points just feel like they're really far away, especially when there's a huge body of water between some of the control points, and there's really no easy way to get to them without swimming there. While the other map, Sa'adid, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it takes place in one city, and you can choose to go to whichever capture point you want. I will say if you do get a teammate that gets a chopper over there, it can be pretty damn useful. But yeah, I'm not saying any of these maps are bad necessarily. It just takes a while to switch gears. Okay, now that we've discussed all of the game modes, it's time to hop into the real meat and potatoes of the review. The Warzone and DMZ modes, which are actually pretty serviceable. I'll just say this right off of the bat because I don't know why, but not a lot of people seem to know this, but Warzone and DMZ are free. Like right now, they are free. You can download the game and play them. They're probably the two funnest modes in the multiplayer, and they're fucking free. Like, it's crazy. So Warzone, for those of you who don't live in some ass crack of Al Mazrah, is the newest battle royale to grace us mortals. And while battle royales are still hot all these years later, Modern Warfare 2 does do a pretty good job of setting it apart from the crowd while also staying familiar, even from the previous Warzone. Which, on that note, they said that they would be supporting Warzone, and I did hear some rumors that they might turn it into Warzone Classic or something like that. And while I do have quite a few skins in the game, and it's sad to see them go, I'm not sure exactly how long they're going to be actively supporting it. I mean, the Battle Royale genre is already oversaturated, and it's not really a good idea to be competing with yourself. So just keep that in mind. So most of everything is about the same. You still get to drop where you want to, but I will say that your loadout doesn't really drop until halfway through the game, which is kinda odd, but I actually do like this change. You actually feel like you're fighting for survival and you just have to make do with what you have, which was kind of my main complaint from the last Warzone game. Because you have other games like Fortnite where you don't even get a loadout. You just have to make do. There is a lot of contracts, but most of them are just hunt squads or players. There is a few safe cracking contracts, which give you some pretty good loot. But then you have intel missions, which isn't really that exciting. I just wish there was more varied contracts like there is in DMZ, which we'll be getting into in a minute. Although you can assault an enemy stronghold, which spawns a juggernaut, and man is he tough to take down. I just wish there was a little bit more of these PvE elements to take on, or maybe you have to rob a train like in Red Dead Redemption Online, or maybe even some elements from the Hunt Showdown. The circle feels like it takes a bit longer to close in, but I actually prefer this since it gives you plenty of time to loot up before getting into an encounter. Also, towards the end, the circle will actually form into two smaller circles that then join up for a final circle, which I guess is kind of a cool gameplay mechanic, and it does make you survive a bit longer, as well as gives you more time to loot up. If you fail an encounter, which, let's be honest, we all do, you'll be sent to the Gulag where, unlike OG Warzone, it puts you in a 2v2 fight to the death. The twist on this game mode is if you don't fight the other team, then the jailer comes out in a juggernaut suit to show you the true meaning of communism. Although, if you actually manage to take him down, all four of you get redeployed. America, fuck yeah! Just like the last Warzone, you can drop in a solo, duo, trio, or quad game. You can also hop into a duos, trios, or quad by yourself if you want, but unless if you're a mad lad like me, it's not really advised. But what I really like about the squad mechanics this time around is in this game, if your teammate dies, you can actually recruit an enemy teammate with the new assimilation mechanic. Now, this really only applies if your teammate leaves you and you happen to find another person that wants one, which chances are 9 times out of 10 you're going to be wiped with your squad. Thankfully, there is another game mode called Unhinged Trios, where this mechanic is used more effectively, since you can actually recruit a whole squad into your party, maxing out at 6 players, which gives you a massive advantage over the others. I love to jump into this game mode just by myself and use my skills of persuasion to find new teammates. It's actually helped me out quite a lot. You can also join an enemy team while in your current team and betray them, which is pretty cool and makes for an interesting game mode. This is mostly in thanks to the new proximity chat feature. I think is actually a welcomed addition to the game. While it is kind of a nuisance to have yourself broadcasted at all times to everyone, it can actually open some dialogue between 2 teams, and you can actually negotiate terms. There's actually been a couple of times where I've talked my way out of an engagement, and I ain't talking about marriage. The locations are pretty good and varied in this game. I mean, yeah, everything just kind of looks like a desert, but it is actually pretty refreshing to see a lot of the multiplayer maps are squeezed into this one. And traversal is very smooth, since there's usually always a vehicle or other means of transportation like the train, which has a crap ton of loot in it and is really fun to go after. Unlike in Caldera, where there's kind of just a lot of open space, especially the fields. Oh my god, fuck, I hate the fields. There's just no cover anywhere. I prefer the main city of Al Mazrah, where there's a lot of buildings and cover to play with, as well as a big ass chopper you can fit a whole squad into. All in all, the game mode is actually pretty fun, besides a few hiccups, but I'm sure most of this will be ironed out in patches. And if not, it's still pretty fun for what it is. Hey yo, real quick, just Mr.LetsGame coming in here. If you guys are enjoying the video, I would very much appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up and subscribed. I absolutely hate plugging this shit into my video, because it tricks you guys subconsciously into doing it. So please just make sure to consciously hit that like button and subscribe, please. Thank you. Now, time for my favorite addition to Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer, DMZ. The campaign did kind of prepare us for this with the mission alone, but it makes me wonder why there was so much crafting elements in that section of the game if they wouldn't have them here in some capacity. It seems like the perfect system to implement into one of these game modes. Who knows, maybe there'll be another game mode released down the line that's a ripoff of Rust, and they'll call it Aftermath or some shit. Or maybe it will never show up at all. But in my opinion, that would be a waste. Anyways, the premise of this game mode can be summed up as Escape from Tarkov Light. It has all of the fun and addicting elements to it, but is definitely not as harsh, and it definitely doesn't have the crippling features that game has. But yeah, you get dropped into the same map as Warzone, but it's much more varied in this approach. In Warzone, you're constantly looking over your shoulder, and you can never really relax with the constant threat of biffing it to some squeaker that doesn't even have a positive KD, and the closing in of radiation. But in DMZ, it's as intense or as laid back as you want it to be. That's not to say it's completely carefree. There is some serious risk versus reward that really keeps you on your toes. For starters, there's only 30 players to a match, which makes the threat of getting ganked way less, but it's still there. As long as you make it to the location, you can exfil at any time you wish, which is awesome. I always enjoyed Titanfall 2's exfil mechanic, where if you lost a match, it would turn into a last man standing game, and you had to make it to the dropship or you'd be left behind. It was such an awesome mechanic, and I never understood why more game modes didn't implement it. Anyway, so you can spawn in with a full squad of 3 or go in alone which I would not necessarily recommend unless you're trying to do a single mission and don't want to worry about any interference. Going in with friends is definitely preferred, since you never know what randos are gonna do. The contracts that are scattered all around the map range anywhere from basic shit like collecting radioactive material, which gives you a surprising amount of cash, or if you got some hair on your nards, you can try assaulting a stronghold, which they do range in difficulty. On top of contracts, you also complete missions. Some of the tier 1 missions are extremely easy, like extracting gas cans and repairing vehicles at gas stations. But some are kind of strange, like buying an armored vehicle, getting 10 kills in it in a specific village, and then destroying it in another location. I mean, I guess it does make sense if you read the description of the missions, but, come on, let's be honest, no one actually does that. You just want to get to the gameplay. So when you want to start a new game, you can take in as much or as little equipment as you want, including guns. If you want, you can do a naked run, which is where you spawn in with no weapons, and see how well that goes for you. Although some of my best plays have been done on naked builds. You also get an insured weapon slot, which allows you to bring in one weapon that you can fully kit out with as much attachments as you've unlocked in the multiplayer. If you lose it, you gotta sit with your thumb up your ass for 2 hours before Mama Cod tells you can have it back. Speaking of guns, in the radiation zone, there's a guy called the Chemist, and if you take him down, you can get the new gun, the M13B, which I've heard is pretty good, which I'll be sure to get and play test it by the time I release my tips and tricks video. Now, there are some downsides to this game mode though. One of them is the enemies can be a little difficult. Oh, especially the Kevlar enemies. I mean, they're like the same in the campaign. I mean, it's just non-stop. It's just, oh my, sometimes they just keep spawning in. They just keep coming down from freaking helicopters and they don't stop. They never stop. They just keep coming in. And they're so freaking accurate. They can snipe you with a freaking shotgun, and it's so infuriating. It's like, oh my god, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. There's contact. I mean, they take you out so easily, and if you don't have a lot of armor, they can down you like really quickly. And don't even get me started about how many there are in the irradiated zone, which is where the Chemist is, which is where you can get the M13B. One last thing I didn't really like about this game mode is you can't really pick where you start out at. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure everybody would start in, certain locations like the city, and then it would just become overcrowded. But I don't know, I think it's just accepted frustration at this point. And I think for the balance of the game, it needed to happen. Okay, now for my final piece of criticism that I really hope the game developers take to heart over everything I've said in this review. After playing the multiplayer for a bit, while I can't say anything too bad about it without coming off nitpicky, which is good, there is one thing I just can't stand, which is the lack of community, friendship, and bonding in general. Allow me, if you will, to get on my soapbox here. But after you get done with a game, the people that you've been playing with or against, it all disappears. It just boots you back to the lobby and just gives you a bunch of new players to fight against. And this isn't necessarily something exclusive to COD. Battlefield and Halo Infinite does this exact same thing too. It's impossible to actually form connections with people. I remember back in the 360 era, after you were done with a game, you'd stick with the group of people you called your allies and enemies. The people that wanted to leave would leave, and it would give you new players to subsidize the players that just left. You could build friendships and rivalries, and this is particularly frustrating when it comes to Warzone and DMZ. I mean, when I'm done with a game mode, my only option is to literally go back to the menu screen and invite them into my party. Why not just ask after you're done with the match if you want to keep playing together or leave? I really don't like this antisocial behavior that games have been adopting lately. I don't know if it's to combat toxic players or for Activision to arbitrarily throw you up against more experienced players to get your shit pushed in. Look it up. It's an actual patent that Activision Blizzard submitted. I don't know if it ever got through, but they did try to patent that type of mechanic. Either way, it's something that I believe is hurting the culture of gaming as a whole, and something we should let be known that we don't want in our games. They only hinder our enjoyment. Thank you very much for listening to my review. I just have to say thank you to everyone who watched my previous reviews. That being said, I have a tips and tricks video in the pipeline I was thinking of doing, as well as a God of War Ragnarok review. Regardless, if you liked this video, please give it a like, and if you especially enjoyed this content and want more like it, consider subscribing. I have a whole playlist filled with reviews that I've done so far. But yeah, if I can keep this momentum going, I don't know, I might have some good stuff in the future for you guys. Me and my friends were thinking about starting a podcast and all that stuff. That being said, thank you once again for watching my video. And tell me, what's the worst glitch that you guys encountered in this game? I mean, I absolutely hate when it rubber bands me. Especially when like you're right in the middle of a clutch play and you start jerking all over the place. It's just really freaking annoying.